Hello everyone, this is Ken Quigley from Keystroke. Today we're going to be doing a presentation on project management for ACT. I'll get more into this program as we go, but wanted to mention that this is being recorded, so it will be distributed out to everyone that registered, and we'll post it in our normal recording places. Okay, so let's get started. ACT Advantage was released on April 15th of this year, and it was the most significant portfolio upgrade in the product's 38-year history. ACT Advantage launched with 9 new fully integrated online programs. So listed here, we've got web forms, interactive quotes, online appointment scheduling, surveys, event management, website chat, email list verification, portal, and URL shortener. What people couldn't use right away that was initially suppressed was project management, which will be covered today. That program, which was initially released a couple of weeks back, that program was not structured in a way to be distributed across multiple servers, multiple regions, and in multiple languages. So it really, and also supports centralized updates as all the other programs did. So when we realized this, we thought, okay, it's got to be rewritten substantially to be more like the other programs, and that's what we spent the last couple of months doing. So after several months of intensive development and testing, it is now almost feature complete. And what you will see today, okay, will be included next week with the July 29th update, internally known as APC 25_13. Okay, project management is now included free with both the professional and ultimate tiers of ACT Advantage. We're not going to do much deeper of a dive on ACT Advantage, but if you want to learn more, then go to gettheadvantage.net and it covers all the different features of that. Okay, what's the webinar objective? The objective of today's webinar is to demonstrate the use of project management for ACT inside of ACT Advantage and its benefits versus what people commonly use like spreadsheets or Google Sheets. Okay, so what and why, basically. What is project management? So project management is defined as the discipline of planning, organizing, and managing resources to achieve specific goals within a defined time frame and budget. For most people, though, it's simply about planning to get things done and then executing on that plan. So what is it? Okay, well, for us, I've broken it down, and this isn't necessarily what you're going to read in all books, but for me, I think it's better understood if we break it down into the 5 W's of project management. Firstly, what? Define the goal of the plan or project and the phases and steps needed to be completed. Who? Which customer is the project for and which team members will be involved? Remember, this is an ACT integrated product, and ACT is a contact-centric program. So we have to view how this program works centered around the contact. When? The start date as well as the dates of each phase, each tasks, when they're completed, especially important when some participants are relying on others to complete their task before they can start theirs. So we'll get into the subject of dependencies as well. So work, okay? Work is the actual execution of all of the above tasks, including the monitoring progress, making changes, and adapting to risks. And finally, it's the wrap up, okay? The project completion, make sure that everyone is aligned, everyone agrees that all deliverables have been executed on. Okay, so why use it? Okay, I'm not going to go through and give you, a long explanation of what a program is before, we get some buy-in as to why we would even bother. So why use project management versus, say, a spreadsheet? Okay, so the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to add another W, okay, and that's why. Okay, W for why. Why would we use project management versus other tools? Well, it saves time. Okay, planning tasks can be set up faster with repeatable workflows. Plus, using built-in tools to calculate costs progress, and even hours. Gantt charts also expedite the scheduling process. Plus, CRM integration saves manual data entry and records project data to the contact record for easy reference. We all know how crazy we get when our Outlook integration doesn't work. Being able to record entire projects to a customer is obviously very important too. Integration combines customer data, contacts, calendars, histories, and sales with projects, tasks, timelines, and deliverables. Okay, timeline and scheduling tools. I talked about the Gantt charts. You're going to see how efficient that is. Calendars, workload planning tools, tools that cannot be duplicated in a spreadsheet, even Google Sheets that can be shared. This one I kind of like, better project structure. If you kind of flow your input your workflow flow through a project management software, certain things just naturally get done, like breaking down tasks within phases, identifying milestones and risks, and also identifying task dependencies. What task has to be done before other tasks can be completed. And the last one, and this is really the most important, and you're going to see this as a recurring theme, and that is the real-time collaboration and visibility. Okay, everyone sees the same up-to-date information, no version controls, like you have to deal with spreadsheets. Role-based access, team members can view or edit only what's relevant to them. Activity tracking, see who did what and when, improving accountability, including support for logging of comments. And two final things, total accountability to the customer. This is something that I was chiefly responsible in driving as kind of an architecture point with project management for ACT, and really centering it around the customer, so that as you're working on their behalf, sometimes they're going to be involved in it, sometimes they just need to see that things are progressing. And I'm going to show you how that works. And the final thing is timeline, showing every step of the project. Now, all of these terms, okay, you're going to get to see live in action. Okay, so now that we're kind of done the high level overview, let's jump into that. Okay, so the first thing, as I said, is we get into the ACT Advantage. So here is my login on my demo page. I immediately go down to additional features. Okay, and I can see project management right here. Now, what I'm going to do, just to kind of give you guys a heads up, is I'm going to demo the initial settings and things like that, and then I'm going to pivot over to our beta site that has all the newest features. Okay, so first thing is we're going to go into the settings up here. Okay, and not that the settings is the most exciting part of any demo, but in order to understand how this program integrates with ACT, we have to understand that when you create an opportunity, you've got the option to create a project. You've got the opportunity of creating a corresponding opportunity in ACT that will record all the activities, record all the histories, even include products and things like that as tasks. But here is where you set up the defaults for that, because you don't want to make that decision over and over again if you can set up defaults that will generally apply. Now, you're going to select the type of opportunity that you want, because you may also be using the opportunities for sales. So you're going to have a dedicated section so that the sales people can easily filter out opportunities that don't relate to their pipelines. Okay, so here's where you would set the process, and here's where you would set the default stage. Okay, and all that means is that's going to be an agreed upon starting point for all new opportunities that are created by the projects. Okay, and then you've got options like create opportunity product when adding a phase. So when you create a phase, it will create a product for that phase. When create an activity when adding a task, create history when completing a task, create note when adding a comment. All of these things are fairly straightforward insofar as our ACT world. Okay, and then we go next. Okay, automatically open last visited project when logging in. That's just a personal preference, not a major thing. The rest of these things all relate to your general workspace, not really project specific. So I'm not going to really cover into them because they're not specific to project management. Okay, but that's the general overview for the settings. So with that, I'm going to pivot over here. I'm going to go back. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover the process of making a new project. Okay. Okay, so here I am. Now, as you can see, the list view is very similar, okay, because we're using the exact same themes and skins, as we call them. Okay, so you can see here when you've got you're looking at what we call the project dashboard, which shows all your projects. Now, what you do is, you can quickly see that we've got these action buttons, open, edit, and here's delete project. Here is the project name. Here is the owner of it. Is it active? How many tasks are involved? How many members are involved? All pretty standard stuff, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to click on new, and we're going to show you the never before seen wizard, okay? So the wizard, there's two ways of creating a project. Obviously, by clicking on new, you can create it, and I'm just going to say webinar project for demo. Okay, so I select the start date. Now, depending on what you're doing, you're going to know that reasonably well, or you're going to give an approximation. Same thing with the end date. Here again, I'm going to create the opportunity for this project. Okay, and now I'm going to select Run the Project Creation Wizard. If you deselect it, I'm going to demonstrate that as well. If you deselect it, then it's going to just immediately go to an empty project. Okay, and that may be useful to you for reasons I'll demonstrate in a minute. But let's go through the wizard since this is the first time it's being seen. Okay, so here we are. What did I say everything is centered around? The contact. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into here and I'm going to type in Fenderline, Fred Fenderline. Okay, now you'll see here it automatically bumps down to the next line. So I can even put in Eddie Browser. Okay, I could select a couple of contacts, or I can just go with one. Most cases, it's just going to be one, whichever. Okay, so as the wizard has started, I've told it to focus. Let's find out who the customer is. Who is this project about? Next, team members. Okay, you notice here I'm automatically selected. I'm the record manager of the project, so it presumes that I'm in. Now, obviously, I don't need to search through the entire database for the users, so I'm going to select here is my other team member. Okay, now if this was set up in more of a production environment, there might be more users listed, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be in the project. Okay. Next is the goal. Now, the goals may seem like you're jumping through a hoop a little bit, but this is a really important thing. Like when you are setting up a goal, you want to make sure that you're aligned on this because I've been in many, many projects, and I'll tell you, there is what is commonly called scope creep. And if you don't define the goal, you may find that your customer wants to add more things to it. So you can, in this case, say, what I'll do is I'll say, migrate customer database to ActAdvantage and do initial software setup. Okay, so if they come back and they say, okay, you're supposed to configure and set and import in all our products and blah, 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 that's not within the goal. So I'm just going to click on OK. I could set in multiple goals, as you can see here, but I'm just going to go with one. Okay. Now, the next is phases. Okay. We got the goals now with, I misspoke here. So now we're in the goals, and it gives you the option to kind of rapidly add in as many quick tasks as possible that you know. okay? It doesn't have to be ordered. It doesn't have to be within particular phases or anything like that. Just all the things that you know need to be done, okay? Now, I'm not going to just go through a typing exercise, and you'll see why at the end. But if I typed in a bunch of these things, hit enter, I can create a list of like 5, 10 tasks that I know I've got to do. I don't necessarily know which stages they're going to be at, but I just know that they've got. Imagine a wedding plan. You know, you've got to do the invitations, you've got to book the venues, you've got the reception, you've got the ceremony, you've got the party, you've got anyway all those things. You can just kind of quick list through all that. Just type out, hit enter, and keep going. Okay, but for the purposes of this, okay. So now the phases. What is a phase? A phase is like a stage in the project. Okay, you can define it as the planning stage. You can define it as the meeting stage. You can define it as the execution stage, whichever. There's nothing formal about this. Whatever makes sense for your particular project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's just say planning, execution, okay, follow up, finish. Okay, nothing super formal about that. I'm going to say next. Okay, now if I had a list of tasks here, I can then assign them to any one of these stages, okay, or phases. Okay, but I don't, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, now under assignments, what I can do, I don't have any tasks, so there's nothing really to assign to, but if I had a task, I can immediately select a participant and assign it, and it would display who is being assigned to what, okay? But everything you do in this wizard, this is just like a walkthrough. This is guiding you through. When you're done, you can go back and edit any of this, and you're gonna see why, okay? So now, okay, final steps. 2 contacts, 2 members. It gives me my final summary, 1 goal, 4 phases. Great. Okay. So here is my very basic project. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now go back. I'm going to click on home, and I'm going to completely delete this. And I'm going to show you an even easier way to do it. I'm going to click on new, and I'm not going to use the wizard, and I'm going to say webinar project. Okay, boom. No wizard, no anything. But the reason I did this is I don't want to go through a bunch of extra steps when I already have a pre-existing workflow from another project that pretty accurately reflects what I want to do today. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on import, and I'm going to select my APC migration migration project. And then what I'm going to do is phase by phase, I'm going to import them, AC select phase, and then select phases subtasks, if any. Groovy. Okay, so now let me repeat it. Okay, now I can import the whole thing, but we did not complete this import process in time, okay, for next week's update. So that's going to be, later, but I'm almost done. The wrap up. Okay, so now I've got the parts of a real project, okay? It doesn't look like it. It just looks like 4 rows, okay? But all these yellow are phases, okay? So to see the tasks within the phase, you just simply click on this little expand chevron, okay? So now I'm going to click on here, click here, click here, okay? So now I've got all of the tasks, okay, displayed inside of each of these, Now, there's a lot of information here, okay? So let's kind of take a look and see how everything works. Here is the phase or the stage. Keep in mind that it's going to process things like cost, like hours. Here is even the stage here, like, or the status, I should say, and the percentage complete. Okay. Now, if I want to click on this, I can clear every stage at once. Okay, but we're not going to do that because that makes for bad television. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how all of these things are tied up into this. Okay, so first thing is get primary account password. So let's click on it. And this is the inside of it. And you can see it's got a bunch of tabs. Um, so here I can add in a bunch of descriptions for, if I'm doing the planning, this may be executed by someone else. I put in a bunch of descriptions here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just give this a random number, okay, and assume that this will be 1 hour. And now again, all of this is pretty high level, so it's hard to associate time and money to these things. That may be very easy when you're in a specific project to estimate what the time and costs are. Sometimes there'll be one, sometimes there'll be both, sometimes there'll be neither. Okay. Now, just to go across these little tabs at the top, this is the detail section. Okay, so now relations. I'm going to get into this in a bit when we get under the Gantt thing, but you're going to run into cases where, let's use this example. We are not going to be able to do anything to migrate a person's database or deploy them until we get their primary account and password. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a predecessor to the next activity. Okay, and what that means is it's a prerequisite. It has to be done before the next activity can be cleared. Okay, so that's why we list predecessors and successors. Now you can add them here manually, but I'm going to show you in the schedule section, otherwise known as Gantt, how it can be done with a mouse, just much, much easier. Okay. And then activities, any associated activities with this, comments, you can log comments. We'll get into that in a bit. And then actual attachments, okay? Like when you're using attachments, you can actually add, let me see, I think I wrote down all the different types, but actually when you upload it, it will list all the different types here. So PDF, text, ODT, docs, ODS, so on and so forth. And it may be a contract, it may be terms and conditions, it may be something relating to the project plan, whichever, you can upload that. Again, a lot of things that already you can see can't be done in a spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to put in $10 and I'm going to put in 1 hour. Okay, and let's see what happens. Okay, so now the cost from this has automatically rolled up. Okay, see $10 here is being calculated at this top level and it's calculated 1 hour. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into this and I'm going to now change the status to in progress. And I'm going to say I'm 10% done. Okay. So now you see here that this status has automatically been updated at the phase level just because I started it here. Okay. Now it says 10% because what it's done, okay, and sorry if this is confusing, but what it's done is it's taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tasks and it's calculated, okay, 5 tasks means 20% for each. Okay. Good question, Scott. Scott's asking if I could put in a URL. Not sure. I got to test that. Good question. But what it's done is it's calculated that 10% of 20% is actually 2% of the whole project. So pretty quick math there. Okay. But let me show you what would happen here if I said, okay, this task is already done. Let me just clear it. So I just click here. You sure? So now, remember I said 20% for each? So now it is automatically at a 20% to 2%, and now I have 4 remaining tasks. If it's important to me to see the tasks that are completed, I can add this filter back and I can see the strikeouts, okay? But to keep this clean, I'm doing it this way. So now you can see that, and by the way, the task that it created in the opportunity for this contact in ACT also got cleared. Okay, so it's important to recognize this is a one-way write. It is not a two-way sync. So if you happen to think, you know what, I'm going to be a smart guy, I'm going to go in and just work inside of ACT, which doesn't really apply anymore because we're inside of ACT Advantage, but I'm going to go inside of the opportunity section, clear a bunch of tasks. They will not write that updated completion status back to projects, okay? We are still debating, you know, the pros and cons of that, but right now it makes sense when you clear activities at the project level that the opportunity would be updated accordingly, and people can then, that are not involved in the project, can actually see, you know, how the project is progressing, okay? So you can see all of this. Let me just make sure I'm covering all that. Okay. And now let's take a look at some of the action buttons that we've got under here. Okay. Now, if you want, if you're at the phase level, you can just simply say add a subtasks, and you say just for testing. Okay. I'm not going to add anything else. Okay. And this has been added here underneath this. However, you can also add a subtask to a task. So if you go to the same kind of button and says add subtask, you can say, this is a subtask test, poorly spelled. Okay, and then you see suddenly a chevron appears here. Okay, and you can nest any number, and it actually allows you to continue nesting them. Now, if you've got like little tasks that require like a sequence of subtasks to be completed, then this is actually pretty appropriate, where you can have a task here that's essentially a de facto phase, okay, but you don't want to treat it as such, okay? And all of the percentage completed roll up to this, the total phase, okay? But I'm going to clear this, okay? You see that this jumped back in again. Every single time I added a task, you notice that the percentage changed, okay? So the next thing here is view. Now, this little down pointing chevron is the priority button. I didn't like that, so that's going to be replaced probably in a few weeks with an exclamation mark, and it will be denoted as, you know, 1 exclamation mark for low priority, 2 for middle, 3 for high, okay? But here you can actually go directly to the comment section if you just want to make a quick comment. And then same thing for this, for adding attachments, okay? All of these are quick action buttons. Now, more actions assigned to me, okay? You'll notice that nothing is assigned here. You're going to assign to me, mark as complete, which is also available over here. Duplicate tasks. If you have a number of tasks that are similar, okay, but assigned to different people, then it might be simpler for you to just duplicate it. Remember what I said, the purpose of this is to really speed things up, add some formality and accountability to your project planning, but mostly to make it easier, okay? And then import subtasks from another project. You may think, you know what, I skipped this step, or I deleted it, let me bring it back in, okay? And this is largely what you've got. Now we're going to add later, you know, collapse and expand all, okay, just to make it a little simpler. But this is your task list, okay? Very, very straightforward. Okay, I don't see, okay. There is no handles here. Okay, so I don't believe, let me just double check. No, there's no handles at this point. So it's not drag and drop, but we do get drag and drop into the next section. That was a question asked here. Let me just pause before going on to Gantt to make sure I've got all my questions covered. Okay. Can you link to an existing opportunity? Not at this stage, it's a good question, okay. Can you create standard workflows for projects that follow the same SOP? You can actually create any kind of projects that reflect different SOPs, and then just import them in. We're actually going to create the ability to have templates as well to make it easier. I'd want to link to an existing opportunity to a project once a purchase is made. I have no problem with the idea, it just hasn't been built in yet because most of the features of the opportunity are going to be defined by the project, which, as I said, at this point is one way. Okay, Scott, just reviewing your questions about OneDrive. I'll get back to you on that. Okay, are these costs customer facing or internal only? Good question. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, and then the last one was the drag and drop the order. As I said, I do not believe that there's any handles at this point. Okay, and to be frank, and I don't mind sharing this, this was a substantial rewrite of the program, so we wanted to make sure that the primary user features were built in for this. Okay, so that's the basic task list. Good question, thank you. Let's go to schedule. Now, when you go to schedule, this is where people, even the iconic references to projects people get, okay? This is the schedule, or what's called the Gantt chart. So if I'm going here, okay, the schedule, as I said, is a Gantt chart. It's a graphical tool used to plan, coordinate, and track specific tasks in a project. Each is represented by a horizontal bar with the length of the bar corresponding to the task duration. Okay. Now the Gantt is used as a visual timeline with each easy to drag around for task management. So again, getting back to the drag and drop. It shows new phases and tasks can be moved and stretched. Phases expand automatically with task management. It's also good for dependencies. We're going to get into that in a minute, where you can actually make one task dependent on another just with a quick drag and drop. Okay. So the first thing is it's important to understand that what you're looking at, much like when you went into tasks, is a collapsed group of phases. So now I'm going to expand each one of these. Okay, so the first thing, what's the purpose of this webinar? The purpose of this webinar is to show you how this program works, but also why this program is better. Like, why would you adopt something new if it's not much more efficient than your previous way? So you see I've got two things that are crossed out. So if I see that this is, you can see this is July 23rd. And by the way, if you ever want to see a change in the time, you can go, day, week, month. Okay, let's go back to days. Okay, so now what I want is, okay, I don't have time on the 23rd, customers called the delay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this over here, okay, and immediately get scheduled. Now, did you see what happened with the phase? The phase automatically expanded to cover the new timeframes of the tasks, okay? So if I want to go here, let's go to month, okay? If I want to go, oh, that's a little bit too big, okay? And let's say I want to go, okay, and okay, you can see that all of these, and you're getting little notices here, are expanding accordingly, okay? Now, I think you will agree that's a lot easier than, typing into, cells on a particular row of a spreadsheet. You can just drag and drop them, and you also get to see how they all relate to each other. So now let's say, I'm just going to drag this over one bit, and that. Let's say that I have to get this task done before this can be done, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush my mouse across here, and I'm going to drag this over here. Come on, I think this, let me just do it. Okay, come on. So now what I've done is I've connected the two very easily. And what I've done is I've made this project recognize that this predecessor has to be completed before this successor can be done. Okay. Now there is a Gantt custom, okay, or process that makes this quite useful for scheduling, because what happens is if I move this ahead of it, okay, this is supposed to then automatically jump so that it stays ahead in the scheduling. I obviously can't have the predecessor take place after the successor. So this is something that will work. We're going to fix in August. I'm just shouting it out there that this currently is going to go into production next week with this thing remaining to be fixed. So what will happen is probably mid-August, we'll have an update that addresses this, and you will be able to drag this around and it will take the successor along in lockstep. Okay. Again, something that isn't going to happen in a spreadsheet. Okay. And then if you want to, okay, so now let's go into this here. Okay. I've double clicked on the tasks, but remember I said that I wanted to show you what the relations look like. You can now see here that this has a successor. Okay, there's no dependencies because this thing doesn't depend on anything else. But if I go into here, I'm going to have the opposite. I'm going to have a predecessor, but not a successor. And you can daisy chain them as much as you like. So if you've got a bunch of people that have dependencies on different tasks and different people, then just by moving one, you can move like 4, 5, 6 different tasks in lockstep in succession. Okay. Again, one more little thing that will save time. Okay. So now we're looking at things here a little differently graphically. We still have some of the add subtasks here where we can do, add phases, add tasks, even at the Gantt level. But, this is something that, most people relate to from a project planning or project management standpoint is the Gantt. Okay. Now, let me just see if there's any questions on that. So this, as I said, very easy to drag and drop around. The next thing is the participants. So if we go into the participants here, okay, we're going to see we've got the members, and I can actually add people on the fly, okay? I could add contacts, in which case I'm going to see here, let's put in Fred Fenderline. Oops, misspelled. Okay, and now I'm going to add a member, add in Craig. Okay, so you remember earlier when I was saying, what is the purpose of, I said one of the purposes, I should say, of project management, it adds structure. Okay, you've got to go through certain steps. The wizard walks you through. So don't forget anything. Who's the contact? Who's the participants? What's your goal? What's your risks? So on and so forth. All those things you are prompted for through the project creation wizard. I didn't use that in the second stage. Remember, I blew up that wizard project and then created one from scratch. And because of that, I actually got into the full project with no other participants, no other contacts. Okay, so that's kind of an easy example about how if you just quickly run to the finish line and then import a a repeatable workflow or a similar type project, you can miss some steps. So I like that little guiding hand that the wizard creates. Okay, and you can see here there's no goals, there's no obstacles. So all these things are much easier when you're prompted them through the creation. But the big point here is under participants is you can add them and now the opportunity should be linked with this appropriate contact. Okay, so as we know, since 2010, opportunities can be created without contacts, without companies, without anything, because it's now a parent table. This will now have this added. Okay, Fred Fenderline added. And as I said, you can add, just like you did during the wizard, you can add multiple contacts as well. Okay, now let's go through quite a few of the others. Now the goals, as I said, pretty straightforward. What is the objective of this project? Okay, it may seem basic and obvious and like a hoop that you're jumping through, but getting everyone aligned on this with the customer and the team can really help avoid what I was describing as scope creep. okay, which can threaten projects. If the goalposts are being moved around by the customer, that's going to impact costs, that's going to impact timeline. This is extremely important to get articulated. Obstacles. Again, this may seem like a little bit of a hoop, but just being asked for what potential obstacles can occur during a project can really provide some good, helpful brainstorming that allows you to kind of address those threats in advance, okay? So an obstacle is a barrier or challenge that prevents a project team from achieving their goal or completing it as planned or on timeline, okay? An example of an obstacle can be a resource constraint, okay? Budget, which we can all relate to, scope creep, which I've mentioned several times, poor communication, okay? If there's a couple of team members that may not communicate verbally, but only go through Slack, you've got to work around that. Technical issues, there may literally be, I mean, for years in this Toronto office, we had terrible internet, so that might be a risk if I'm hosting an event like this, and that's part of the stages. Okay, stakeholder conflicts, regulatory legal restraints. I mean, obstacles are endless, okay? But you can just add them in, okay, and define them all and then clear them once they're resolved in advance, okay? Now comments, again, this is something that you can add at the project level or at the task level, okay? So let me just go back here and I'll show you an example. If I go back to tasks, I'm going to click expand and I'm going to put in, okay, this person has forgotten their password. Never happened. Okay, so now we can close that and I can go back to comments, okay? And I can see here, it's showing all the different comments. So it doesn't matter which task you put it under, which phase, you'll get that. Now let's say here, it disappears. Why? Because this is a task specific comment. What if I put in something like this and I said, Nav always shows up late for work, so plan accordingly. Okay, I can put that, and now because that's at the project level, I can see it by using this filter. We need to add in many, many more filters. I'm a big fan of filtering because I want to be able to efficiently see what I need to see. User filters, collapse, expand, things like that. I'll get into that in the end, but that's what that's about, okay? Attachments, as I said, is fairly self-explanatory. You can upload them at the project level. So if you really are working with an SOP, okay, or you're working with a contract that may include an accepted quote, then it might be useful to add that here, okay, and using these, these file formats. I tested yesterday. If you try to use the other file format, any other file format, it just will not work. And then obviously, like a history, you can give it a name and give it a description. Okay, so Scott, I am going to get to the, Scott's asking a good question. He's asking, will the customers be able to see it? I promise you I'm going to get to that, okay? Timeline. So here is the timeline. You can see every single minuscule task that is done on this, okay, is recorded under the timeline. So if you're a project manager, you can quickly go through, you can see who's doing what, you can get an update on every single task, however minute, even if it's just changing a percentage, changing cost, changing an hour, whichever, or clearing a task, you're going to get everything broken down here, okay? Now, the biggest part of this program for me is being able to collaborate with the customer, okay? So to collaborate with the customer and be able to share the project, okay? So Scott has asked me a couple times, what's the customer going to see? What's the customer see? Okay, so let me just say this. One of the key features of project management is being able to share the progress with them. So they have to have access to the program. Now, are you going to invite them into your CRM? Of course not. Okay. So how can you generate them a link that they can use? So I was having breakfast with a buddy of mine this morning, and I said, and he was saying, "Oh, what he sells doors and windows. How can we possibly use project management? How could you not? Okay, when you sell someone a door or a window, it may be 6 weeks, 2 months before they get it. Wouldn't it be nice for you to map out a plan that they can look at so they know when to expect each stage to happen, whether it's the window delivery from the manufacturer to you, when the installation is going to happen, what things they have to do to prepare for the installation, when payment is due, all of these different things. Wouldn't it be nice if you can share a link with them so that they don't have to keep calling you and say, oh, when's this going to happen? When's this going to happen? Like, for instance, I've got to get some work done on my boat. Okay. I would like, without having to keep calling them, be able to look at a progress sheet and know what's being done and when it's likely to be completed. Okay. That to me is the ultimate accountability. That is a feature that we had in the previous version before it was brought into ActAdvantage, and it's something that's going to be released in August. But words speak 1,000, or pictures speak 1,000 words. So let me show you what that will look like. So now I'm going to open up this, and I'm going to show you a sample. Oh, maybe if I knew how to use, come on, what am I missing here? Okay, put a little O here. That would be better. Okay, so it's got a different skin, different feel because it's using the old layout styles, okay? But this is what the current production version of project management looks like. Now, this, you'll notice there's no other show me my projects or anything. This is a view that the customer will see, okay? Now, here's what's cool about this, okay? You can control precisely how they engage with this. So this can be a screen that will be updated in real time. I can't display the project that I've just created in front of you because this feature doesn't exist yet. We tried to get it in time for next week, but that deadline was yesterday, just couldn't do it. So it's likely going to be in the mid-August release. But I'm showing you how all of this works and how you can apply it. So Scott, okay, so Scott, let's say that you wanted to share, okay, the project with them, okay. You can actually generate a link from the participant section, okay, and just to kind of show you what that would look like, go here, okay, and you can send it out through here. Now, all of these are grayed out, okay, so you can't do anything, but when they're active, you'll be able to send out a link that they will have access to. And you will be able to determine how they can engage with that. Okay, so let's take a look here. Let's go over to the production here. Okay, go to participants. Okay, and let's click on permissions. So you're going to be able to control, will the customer be able to clear tasks? Will they be able to add comments? Okay. Will they be able to reschedule tasks? You can clear all of these and they will in fact just get a read-only version of the program. Okay. But imagine this, like imagine, Scott, you are working with a customer and it's a fairly involved project. Maybe it's your ActAdvisor deployment and it's across 5 or 6 users, maybe a couple of offices. You can quickly map out a plan or just, use a boilerplate, import it in like I did, okay, and then share it with them so they and make whatever personal changes, reflecting their particular project, and then share with them the link, and they're going to know exactly what's going to happen and when and what they have to do to prepare for it. Maybe they've got to get IT involved, things like that. And by the way, you can include other people, okay, that are in your database that may not be members, okay, but are facilitators, okay, or enablers like an IT company or things like that. So now you've got the ability to share with this. And now, if it's read only, they're not going to be able to see any of these things. Okay, they'll just be able to see the list without having any action buttons. But to me, I think that's pretty cool. Okay, and being able to share all of that. Now, To some of your questions, what's going to be visible to them and what's not, I'm going to have to go back and, because I don't want to just throw an answer at you. I want to confirm that that the new version reflects what the old version will do, but it should. But in general, they'll be able to see anything that is expanded, okay, or can be expanded from phases and tasks, okay? And they can also click here, okay? And I think I'll show you how this works here. I'm going to drag this over here, okay? So now watch what happens when I move this. See how it automatically adjusts? That's what our version will do sometime in August. Okay, I'm just showing you the production version. Okay, it's obviously not skinned to look much like this because we wanted to keep this, you know, have some visual continuity with some of the other programs. So a fair bit of reskinning was required, but the general functionality, columns, rows, and everything else and features are consistent. Okay, now getting back here, the timeline we covered, okay? So we've got about 7 minutes left. I want to cover the future features, okay? We've covered a lot in this section, in this meeting, but I want to cover what's to come. Some of which I've told you, some involve fixes, like the being able to drag around in lockstep dependent tasks. Some of which you saw up here, okay? If you click on overview, you have an entire project overlay that allows you to view it. Here is, you know, Agile, Jira, okay, basic project management, things like that. So your top level overview, okay, is going to be supported, you know, in whatever project style or format you're accustomed to using. And they've even got things that are industry specific, construction projects, educational, things like that. Okay. More, I can't give a timeline on that, but that's definitely on the agenda. Share links we've already covered. That's going to be in August for sure. We're also going to have reports. Okay. Right now reports aren't visible, but you can have reports. Things like, you know, show me a report on the phases, goals, teams. Show me what's due next month, what's due next week. Those kinds of things. Exporting. If we go up here, go to the task list. Right now we've got export to Excel. So this is another way you can share with people where you export everything out as Excel. It's kind of funny how, you know, how I said that this program is so much more efficient than Excel. It doesn't mean that it's going to exclude Excel. Okay, it's going to export to Excel, and you can share that with other people. Export to PDF, okay, and then import phases from other projects. Okay, Greg has just asked a good question. How are opportunity totals added to the op? You remember that checkbox that I said at the beginning where you can create phases as products? Okay, that's how. So what happens is, remember, if you go back here, okay, and we go to tasks, and good question, Greg, I'm gonna expand this. Now, if I try to click on this, okay, you'll see all of these are grayed out, okay? So this phase would be a product in the opportunity. So whatever costs roll up to that would roll up as a product, and then that would increase the cost of the opportunity in total. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up there, Forrest. Excellent. Good. Good question. Thank you for making sure I covered that. Okay. Nav, can you go back to adding additional phases? Certainly. Okay. If you want to go in here, you can just click on new phase. Okay. Okay. And now this gets added to the bottom. Okay. I'm definitely going to look at the option for putting a handle in here and grabbing those around. I'm actually going to put that in here on the future. Make tasks, grabbable. Good feedback. Okay. Okay, so we've got that. So we've added that. And then obviously within here, you can add tasks. Task for nav. Okay, and then the chevron appears, allowing you to expand it. Okay. I'm also going to add here, expand all and collapse all, just so I don't have to do them individually. Customize columns. So maybe if some of these columns you don't need for your personal use, you'll be able to customize columns. Again, that certainly is consistent with the way people manage their ACT in list view. Okay, and then additional task filters, like for task lists, like for me, in the task list, I may only want to see mine. Okay, like I don't want to filter through anyone else's. So if I go into here, okay, I can, decide, who is assigned to what, and then up here I should have a filter that says show me only Dwayne's or show me only mine. Okay, so those are going to be future filters available. Okay, will it color code a tasks phase that is 100%? It will do a strikeout, like here. Okay, and then show here. But I don't think we've got any plans to do color coding. Okay. We're at 158. I think we've covered most of what I wanted to cover today. For those that like people like Greg and some of the ACT staff that are on this, if you've used the current production version, this is going to be a hallelujah. This is going to be a significant increase in the functionality of the program that now, in my opinion, has significant business use case. Okay. The previous iteration was just kind of, getting our foot in the door. We knew within the next couple of weeks we were going to put some real meat in the bones. And I think with this, we have, and certainly expect more of the same in the coming weeks. Okay. So if there's no further questions, I will wrap this up. Thank you all. And if you registered for this webinar, you will get a link to the recording in short order. Okay, so thanks again. Have a great day.